next is the title of this Biennale, The Future of Global Architecture. What kind of architecture do you think is next?
I mean, I think the Biennale has been very successful in demonstrating that there is going to be a very interesting production in the next 5 or 6 years internationally of, I think, a rather good direction of modern architecture. This is a period where there's quite a consistency in the direction of modernism. We don't have enormous divergence in terms of the critical architectural debate in terms of postmodernism or any other isms. I suppose the big change in the last years has been a formal one, an investigation using computers generally, but not uniquely, in the generation of form. But forgetting formal questions, I think that what has really changed in this last 15 years, and you can witness it, I think, very well here, is that the architectural debate, sort of critical discussion of architecture, has moved into architecture itself, not a sort of parallel discussion and a theoretical discourse, and then some people build. I mean, if you think of 15 years ago, the intelligent people were not building. Now you have intelligent people building, and I think that's an enormous difference. You now have intelligent architects who really want to resolve their ideas through architecture.
Do you have much more attitude, especially with one of these museum residences, garage? You built also garages, and so what do you prefer?
These are all public buildings, which require you to help define what life should be like, what institutions should be like, what it should be like to go to the court. I mean, I'm interested in architecture, not so much just as form, but actually how it makes the ritual of our lives better in a very small way. In that sense, I'm very happy to do a house, because I think getting up in the morning and having a bath and reading the newspaper, drinking coffee, doing the washing up, taking the children out of their bed, all of these things, architecture doesn't change your life, but it can make these ritual, these quotidiani things more enjoyable.
So, I mean, don't you think that urban architecture can change the life? Do you think that people live in Venice can be the same people live in New York?
Everything has an influence, but I think as architects, we have to be very careful we don't overestimate how much we can change. We don't save lives. We're not doctors. And I think there was a sort of heroic period in architecture, which sort of became weaker and weaker through the 20th century, but we still retained this sort of heroic idea that architecture changed the world. And then we became all disappointed that it didn't really, or as architects we didn't change the world. I think it's much easier to say, okay, we don't change the world at all. Let's be clear. But what we do has result and has influence. Maybe not as much influence as whether Italy wins the World Cup or not. I mean, maybe someone playing football for Italy and winning the World Cup changes everyone's attitude in Italy for 2 months or 3 months or 4 months, much more than anyone designing architecture can possibly have. This is a reality of modern life. So I think we shouldn't overestimate what we can do as architects. But just every decision we make, so if you design someone's house, if you put the shaving mirror on the wrong side, every time the guy is shaving his mirror, he's upset. If the door is not opening in a nice way, if the window is in a nice view, then when you get up in the morning, maybe it makes your life a little bit happier. But a little bit, but it's not insignificant. And I think, you know, these are the things which I find interesting about architecture. Working, and I started my career not with big ambitions. I always worked on little things, the small house, and so I always have an enormous confidence in those small decisions of domestic life. And when it comes to bigger projects, I tend to try and bring the same approach. So if you're going to make a law court, what is it you hate about law court? What is it I hate about it? I hate the idea that you go to a big monumental building, which seems to be from the beginning telling if I was going there for a court case or something, to give me some fear, to make me feel I'm guilty, or, you know, and to go into this, to go up the steps into this enormous building with these corridors, and it would make me, it's not humane. You know. So the first thing I would do about designing a law court was to think, how could you make a law court more friendly, more humane? How could you put the individual person in a better place? So this is what my interest in architecture is always, is how can you put the individual in a better position in relation to this building or this urban project, or I think that's really, so if you go to the cemetery in Venice, in the recent years, they've made the walls like a library. So if you're looking for your grandmother, you're going down like a library. It seemed to me a very unromantic and very mechanical way. So I don't like this. If you're making walls, so why don't we make the walls like a room, and make a garden? So instead of having 4 walls like that, why don't you have 4 walls like that and put some trees in the middle? Then looking for your grandmother is nicer, and maybe those 4 walls go around one garden and it has a orange tree, and this one has different trees. So maybe there's also an idea of identity, so that there's some sort of, again, more romantic idea of a cemetery. So I always begin with a sort of critique from a sort of humane point of view, putting the individual who is, I'm thinking, you know, what is it to be in the library? What is it I like about the library? What I don't like about a library? What is it to be in the cemetery? What is it to be in the law court? If you're guilty or not guilty, I don't know. But what is it to be in these places, and how can architecture somehow make this daily process more enjoyable?
Can you tell me something about your relation with the material? I mean, technical one like steel or things like this, and vernacular one like stones and wood.
I'm always sort of, I was surprised when people say, I hate this material, I hate that material. I mean, it's a stupid thing to say, because I think all materials can be wonderfully used. It's really a question about how you use them. If you go into many hotel lobbies, you would hate marble. You would never use marble again. You know, it's just because the marble is used in such a horrible way.
Shiny white marble.
And in an unfeeling way. But marble can be beautiful. So, and plastic can be horrible, it can be good. So I think the question is how to make materials present their qualities in the best way. And I think that's the task of the architect, is that we are playing with physical materials. You know, this is our power more than painters or poets, or, you know, they're jealous of us because we make rooms, and we can use daylight, and we can use artificial light, and we can use stone, and we can, you know, it's a very physical thing. So I think that one thing that's interesting is to make sure that architecture has this physical quality.